morning and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we feature a mini course or a really helpful topic to help educate you on real topics, real issues, and real solutions in the in-home childcare world. Tonight, we have a special guest, Shenandoah Davis, who is the CEO and co-founder of Adventure Nannies, one of the leading national placement agencies in the country. You can read Shenandoah's bio in the feed, but here's what you need to know. In the last 3 years in particular, Shenandoah and her team at Adventure Nannies have really raised the bar and kind of just changed the standards and kind of tipped things on edge a little bit in the nanny industry. And they are now one of the most well-respected agencies, both with parents and agencies, but nannies as well. And I know that the families I've talked to, the agencies that I've talked to, and the nannies that I've talked to really have a great respect for how Adventure Nannies is doing things. We've had the opportunity to work with them several times on various projects with our training and National Nanny Training days, things like that. And I'm going to ask Shenandoah to tell you a little bit about it, but they place nannies, they place newborn care specialists, they place private educators, and a whole lot more. And so tonight, what we're going to talk about is how you, as an applicant, can really stand out in what is becoming very quickly a pretty big sea of applicants from what we're hearing from a lot of agencies. I'm hearing from agencies all over the country that their offices are being flooded with applications. And so what we've asked Shenandoah to kind of talk with you about is to really share the tips on what it takes to stand out, to get noticed, and get that interview opportunity. So welcome to Real Talk.
Oh, thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So before we kind of really get into the meat of this, can you kind of give us an overview of where things are at right now in the industry from an agency perspective, in terms of, what's going on, what you're seeing from applicants, what you're hearing from families? Just give us kind of an update.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tumultuous and confusing time for everybody. I think it's an exciting time, but we in the last couple of weeks, we have actually had 2 record-setting weeks in a row of signing on the most clients we've ever signed on in a week. We're working with a lot of families who are looking for teachers or hybrid nanny private educators for the fall. We just signed on a lot of families who are looking for a newborn care specialist. What we're seeing kind of from both the family and the applicant side of things is that everyone is in a little bit of a panic mode. They don't really know what's going to be happening in the next month or the next 6 months. And so on the family side, that means that we're having to do a lot more education up front and kind of explaining some basics that often, but not always, families come to us with a little bit of a more solid understanding of. And on the application side, we have also seen a lot more candidates coming in, both like amazing top tier candidates who we've been wanting to work with for years, but we can't because they apply for a job and then 2 days later they say, never mind, I have 4 competing offers.
Right.
And also a lot of people who, are trying to transition out of the daycare or preschool teaching setting and sort of entering the nannying world for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you said you're also getting a lot of like newborn care specialist positions as well. Of course, we love to hear that, and our students love to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us for a minute, kind of share what you see as an agency as what's really important for the applicant to share when they're submitting an application. What do you need to know about what they're interested in, what they're looking for? How does that all work?
I think right now, because so many agencies are seeing a new volume of applicants, and for our agency, because we're nationwide, we have always seen a lot of applicants. Last year, we had 14,000 people apply for our job. So it's really, we're diving into a stack of resumes. But right now, what we're really trying to understand from candidates, ideally before we reach out to them, is why they're interested in a specific position.
Mm-hmm.
in this economy with the unemployment and people being scared, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are looking for a job, which we, understand absolutely and want people to have. But the clients who have come to us are really trusting us to find candidates who are really excited about their job
Hmm.
in particular. And so, as you're applying for jobs, if there's a space in the application to talk about why a particular job excites you, why you have a special skill set that is going to apply to that family, if you love the location, if there's anything about the family's personality that really stood out to you as being a match, um, it's so important to find a way to incorporate that into the application. Or if there's not an opportunity, to send a follow-up email to the agency after you've applied and saying, like, I just wanted to let you know I just applied and this is my dream job and here's why, and I've been looking for a job like this for so long and here's why I'm really interested in it.
Hmm. Okay. So, if, say, for example, if I'm a newborn care specialist and I apply for a job and you have one with triplets and it's in Tahiti, or they travel to Tahiti twice a year, I'm going to send you a thing that says, look, I love all newborns, but wow, I've been called the triplet nanny for almost 20 years now because that's really my kind of unique niche. It's where I love to work. And then you add in the fact that the job goes to Tahiti for 6 months a year and I'm a scuba diver.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I really am interested in this particular job over the everyday one in my neighborhood, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. There's dream job right there, right? I know we've joked for years. I've said if you get one that has scuba diving, I might re-enter the nanny market even.
We're still looking. We're looking for you, Tanya.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so right now, our applications, when they come in, are they kind of boilerplate? Do they go through some kind of sorting software like we hear about that HR firms use? Or is it more important? And do you guys and other agencies really look at this more as a personal kind of one on one evaluation?
Yeah. There are a lot of agencies that use some kind of software. There are a lot that don't. We use software, but for us, and I don't think for any agency, when we say software, we're not talking about, an HR platform or LinkedIn or Uber. Like, the software platforms that are available for agencies to use are pretty basic. And we can really tell a lot of times, for every single job, we have some specific job screening questions that someone has to ask for each job they're applying to pertaining
Mhm.
to that job in particular. And we can tell that sometimes people fill them out assuming that some kind of robot is going to go through and sift out the submissions. Um, and that's not a robot. That's 10 people who work at Adventure Nannies. And
Mhm.
so it's important, whether there's some kind of agency software or not, it's not fancy software,
Mhm.
fortunately. Um, and so, for every question you're answering, if there is a text box, if there's an opportunity to share more, to be a little bit more thoughtful and thorough when you're filling that out, to make yourself stand out. If there's a question about having teaching experience, your answer should not be yes. It should be, yes, I was an elementary school teacher for 5 years and here's what I loved about it. And then I went and did this other related thing. Um, Even if it's repeating information that's on your resume, right now, because we're getting so many resumes, our recruiters are really relying on the answers to those job questions first, before they even think about going to look at the resume.
Okay. So, related to that, then, would you say that, you think that those questions and what's going on there, that may be, at least in terms of the agency, that's more important right now than their resume?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But is that resume still important to have in terms of the family?
The resume is still very important to have.
Hmm.
Um, and I would caution people right now, because of the number of candidates who are applying, that there has never been a better time to be 100% honest on your resume. Um, I think all agency owners experience, you know, a little bit of embellishment, and a lot of us have done it ourselves. Maybe you're a nanny, and on the resume, you become a nanny slash household manager because you went to the grocery store sometimes. But especially right now, because people are kind of desperate for work, we're seeing like more than 10 times the amount of inconsistencies and, not totally honest information
Hmm.
that we were beforehand. And so, particularly if you're working with the same agency over and over again, we don't have file cabinets and shredders. We have every single copy of your resume that you've ever sent to us. And so if you send us a new resume 6 months later and all of a sudden a job you had 2 years ago lasted for 3 years, whereas 6 months ago your resume said it lasted for 9 months, that's not really going to make a lot of sense. And so, having your references ironclad, knowing that they can all be contacted, making sure all of the information on your resume is accurate is really, really important right now, because
Hmm.
a lot of agencies are having to be a lot more thorough and in depth with how they actually verify that the information is true.
Hmm.
Um, and, in pre coronavirus, we would sometimes take the time and the opportunity to have a conversation with the candidate to say, listen, you said this position was 2 years. We talked to the mom. She said it lasted for 1 year. Not a big deal, but we need to change your resume so that it's reflecting the facts. And right now, because of how busy we are, and I know, for a lot of agencies, they have staff who are furloughed. They're running the agency by themselves right now. They're starting to get overloaded. Like, we unfortunately don't have as much bandwidth to give people the benefit of the doubt when something comes up that is clearly not
Hmm.
accurate in the information they've sent.
Right. So, say for example, if I've applied with Adventure Nannies in the past and I want to apply to a new position that you have, and I'm taking this to heart, and I go through my resume and I find that I have a mistake in there. Maybe I put 2016 instead of 2017 or something like that. So there's a mistake in there. How would you suggest, if I'm applying and want to be considered rather than automatically eliminated because you pick up that inconsistency, how should somebody address that with you?
I think if you're working with an agency who you already have a relationship with, it makes sense to be upfront about that and just send an email along with your new resume that says, hey, I was cleaning up my resume because I'm trying really hard to get this job I'm so excited about, and I want to make everything as easy for the agency as I can. And I did notice that I put the wrong date on this, or the wrong age of a child, or that this person's phone number has changed, or whatever it is. Um, if people are if people are upfront about changes, then we totally understand that. If
Mhm.
we get 5 or 6 hours into our vetting process and then find an inconsistency that we tends to feel less excited about trying to
Right.
figure out where it came from.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I tell people all the time that what may seem like a simple mistake to you is huge. And at the end of the day, if there's any doubt in the agency's mind, the agency's not going to they're not going to take that chance, especially now with so many available candidates. But a doubt in a family's mind can end up entirely ruining the experience as well. And so we need to be really careful, not just from the agency standpoint, but also from the family standpoint as well.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So if an applicant is interviewing with you as an agency, we'll start there and then we'll look at the next one. What should they be sharing with you? What should they not be sharing you? Can you maybe give us 2 or 3 tips for really kind of acing that interview opportunity with the agency? Because obviously the agency is the gatekeeper to the family.
I think the most important thing right now, and sort of the biggest challenge, is finding a way to appear professional and confident in a video interview. Um, I certainly put on mascara today for the first time in about 6 weeks, and uh, I'm still wearing yoga pants, but this is a top up video, so it's fine.
Right.
But
Just don't stand up, right?
I won't. I promise I will not. Um, but to while we're all in this kind of sequestered shelter at home spot, to try to remember in the past what you would wear going to a job interview, and try to prepare your home and yourself for being in that mindset, not just only so you appear more professional, but that you do feel like you're in normalcy.
Hmm.
It is still a job interview, even though it's happening in your living room or your office instead of in an agency's office. Um,
Right.
and I think that, also again, in talking about standing out, it's so important again to remember what is it about the position you're excited about to be able to go, more in depth than your resume and to talk about other things that you're interested in or what you've been reading or learning about during this time. Any special skills or anything that you're excited to share with the family that maybe wasn't sticking out on that resume.
Hmm. Is
Um,
there anything when they talk to you as an agency that they shouldn't be talking to you about? Is particularly, I mean, I know I've experienced that because you're in your home, we tend to be a little more casual, a
mhm.
little more familiar. Is there anything they shouldn't be talking about?
I think the hardest thing right now is that so many nannies have just lost their jobs in the last couple of months. And there were jobs they never thought that they would lose. And so we've heard, both through Adventure Nannies and through the Nanny Relief Fund, so many stories of nannies who really they felt like they had become part of someone's family and families who told them that. And then all of a sudden this happened and the family had booked it out to the Hamptons and all of a sudden their nanny was fired with no notice and no severance and no anything. Um, so these stories are hard and people haven't really had time to process them or share them with anyone because they've been at home. Um, However, an agency interview is not maybe the best opportunity to be sharing how this last position ended, how hard it has been to be quarantined, how sad and scared of the world the coronavirus makes you. Um, we really, we understand that it's different talking to an agency than it is talking to a family, but especially when it's a first agency interview and we don't know someone, we really assume that whatever judgment a nanny or a candidate is using in their interview with us, they will also be using in the family interview.
Hmm.
Um, and it's hard for us to send someone who, seems like depressed or very upset with their last nanny family to one of our families to interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not that those feelings aren't real.
Hmm.
But what I hear you saying is that it's really important that in this, at least in the very initial interview process, when the agency doesn't know you well, that you present essentially exactly like you would as if you were meeting with the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that makes you as an agency much more confident about sending them in to interview. And when it starts out with enthusiasm from the agency, that's just enthusiasm for the family, also.
Yeah, and the stories are terrible. Like this has affected everyone in so many different ways, and like I've certainly cried about a lot of the stories that we've heard come in. Um, but we're just a nanny agency. Like whoever you're talking to is just a person who works at a nanny agency. Like we can't help with whatever already happened.
Mhm.
We can only help with what's about to happen. And so trying to, have that positive mindset and be looking forward instead of looking backwards and saying, here are all these things that happened in the last couple months and this is terrible, will make the interview go a lot better for everyone.
Right. And what about with the family? Is there anything that you want to share with nannies or something that you see that is a common mistake that you would love to see people not make?
I mean, I think that right now, as we're moving into the fall, we're seeing a lot more requests come in for live in candidates. A lot of families are working from home and they don't know when they're going to be able to go back into the office. And so I know for us, the kind of the two biggest complaints from candidates or the two biggest boundaries were that they didn't want to work with stay at home parents and they didn't want to be live in. And I really understand why both of those things are challenging. But um, right now, those are both situations that families aren't going to have a lot of control over. And so, as nannies are coming into these situations saying, like, no, I don't want to live in with you because I don't like going on Tinder dates on the weekends and I like having my own stuff in my apartment. Um, the family also kind of doesn't want the nanny to live in. They understand that and they respect it, but they're worried about, cross contamination and people getting infected and worried about making sure that a nanny can still work the next time a shelter in place order goes into effect in these states where nannies weren't considered essential for people who are working from home.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know I was in the job market in the late 1999, early 2000, when we had a big tech market crash. And I was in Seattle. I'd been in Seattle for many years. And I had to make a radical change. I had to move basically to the Southwest. And I took a live in nanny job for the first time in many years because that crash affected the impact of the entire country. But in particular, it affected things where I was living. And I had to look at opportunities that were not what I normally would have considered. Now, it ended up working out really well because I looked at the circumstance and set really clear, defined boundaries. And I think there's ways nannies can do those things. So I love that you brought that up because being open to something that's different than what you might normally do might be really important to consider right now.
Yeah, and I think too, there are so many reasons that, that nannies have to draw lines and sort of explain how to respect their position and how to respect them as an employee in terms of, not doing housekeeping, not living in, not being on call all of the time. Um, and like right now, like I truly believe like none of these families who are coming to us looking for a live-in nanny are doing it so they can have someone available all the time or so they can take advantage of someone, or so they can pay them less. They're just really trying to come up with a solution that's going to be the safest for
Hmm.
everybody involved.
Yeah, I agree too. And, it's hard right now. A lot of people don't know what the futures holds. And frankly, we don't even know right now for sure a lot of the things that we're doing
Yeah.
are everything we should be doing.
Yeah.
Um, so, because of what's going on, because of what we're dealing with right now, should a nanny candidate or an NCS candidate or even a private educator, should they be talking about COVID with families right now? Or is this something that they probably should avoid because a lot of people have a lot of stress and anxiety around this?
I think it's important to talk about. We've created a list of questions and kind of scenarios that we send to candidates and families before an interview and encourage them to go over together. Um, we're not doctors or the CDC, and we have candidates and families all over the country. So we don't have a special set of Adventure Nannies coronavirus rules because we don't know anything. Again, like we're just people who work at a nanny agency. But, particularly if you get into the interview process and the family is, if things are moving forward, they're talking about, you know, potentially hiring you or trying to bring you out and do. A lot of families are paying nannies to quarantine for 2 weeks and then go do an in-person interview right now. Um, but it is important for both parties to sort of share what their day-to-day routine looks like right now, because all over the country different people's versions of what safe practices are, they're different from one state to another and they're different from one house to another. And I would say so far we have really seen nannies and NCSs being a lot more cautious than the families who we've been talking to,
Mhm.
as a general rule. And so, you know for one for one person, this time means staying at home and sanitizing your mail and never ordering takeout and like living off of all the food in their garage. And for another family, that might look like going and having a barbecue at the park where 10 people are all standing 6 feet away from each other and thinking that that's totally safe. And I'm not saying like one is better than the other, but we're really trying to make sure that upfront candidates and families are sharing what their versions of safe are so that they can try to find, the safest version that everyone will feel comfortable with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, the next thing I want to ask you about is, and I hear this a lot, even outside of the COVID environment, I hear this a lot from people. It's probably one of the biggest questions that I get when people talk to me about working with an agency is I applied with an agency and I haven't heard anything back from them. How often should I call them? Should I email them? What do? I don't want to be a pest and, tick them off so they won't represent me. But how do I know if they even got my application or where things are at? What do you tell people?
Yeah. Well, I think there, in general, pre-COVID, there's something to be said for being proactive and sending a check-in email, you know, maybe once a month, maybe an occasional call. Hello, I'm still on your radar. Just applied for 3 new jobs. Just wanted to say hi. Um, but again, right now, like Adventure Nannies is really lucky because we were able to keep our whole staff on board for all of their hours during this whole thing. But I know a lot of agencies have not been that lucky, and a lot of agencies you know, have cut people's hours. People who had 4 or 5 staff people are running their agencies by themselves right now. Families are responding a lot more slowly. Searches in general are just taking longer. Everything is just taking longer. And so if you are looking to be proactive and you haven't heard anything back, I would encourage you first to look at the materials the agency sent you to see if there's an expectation that they've set on when you should be hearing something back, and only to follow up if that time frame has passed. Or if you feel like maybe if more than a week has gone by, or if you feel like too long has gone by, the best way to be proactive would be to email and say, hey, I applied 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything back. I was really excited in this job. Is there anything I should do differently next time I apply to get a response more quickly?
Hmm.
We're asking, even though the email that you get back will take longer for someone to write, we really appreciate it when people are going out of their way to ask us what they can do to be more successful in the process.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say on Monday morning, our recruiter, comes into the office to 60 emails from people who are just saying, I just applied for a job. Did the application go through? I applied for a job yesterday. Is there an update? When you apply for a job, you get an email saying, you applied for the job. We got your application. We will reach out if we have any questions. If you're a fit for the job, please don't contact us. And so like one person's version of being proactive in that situation to us is like, creating some unnecessary work that we've already tried to circumvent by providing instructions. And it takes away from the time we get to spend on trying to help candidates.
Right. Yeah. And, I think people don't realize sometimes that, say, you got 60 emails you have to respond to. Even if each one only takes 1 minute, that's an entire hour of time
Mhm.
just to respond to emails. And you and I both know that most emails are not 1 minute or less to respond to. And that's potentially, 2, 3, 4 hours out of a day to respond to all of those if it takes longer. Um, well, I know that a lot of people really don't always understand how that process goes. But I know, and I'm sure you would affirm, that it's not because the agency wants to ignore you. Agencies want to get you placed,
Oh,
they want to put you with families. That's how they make money,
yeah.
right?
I mean, it's why we exist.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, is there anything else that you think is important for our audience to know, particularly right now, about the application process? Is there anything unusual, anything different, any great tips that you have for them? Anything?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've been reading a lot online and then, different nanny communities. A lot of people are really scared right now and nervous about what's going to happen kind of on all levels, all the way across the country. Um, and I'm happy to share with you that all of these super, super rich people in the country are doing totally fine. So don't worry about them.
Right.
Um, and they all still want nannies, and they are still prioritizing people with years of experience and beautiful resumes who are articulate and can communicate professionally, and are just fun, positive people to be around.
And
Um,
well trained, right?
Yeah, of course. Um, and so as we start to hear about the market becoming competitive and all of these applicants coming in, um, it, you know, if you're watching this and you're paying attention to what Tanya's doing, you're probably already in the top 5% of applicants in there, and the top 5% of jobs all still exist.
Mhm.
So I would say, yes, like brush up your resume and pay attention to how you're interviewing, and try to stay positive, but um, it's not a catastrophe.
Mhm. And kind of related to that, you just touched on something that has been kind of my mainstay through all of this, is get everything updated,
Mhm.
including no matter what your area of specialty is, make sure your education is on point and updated. It's worth that investment in yourself of the time and the money. It pays off really quickly with job things, no matter what avenue of the in home care industry you're in. But positivity, I have, I've literally like snoozed or unfollowed probably 50 people in the last 8 weeks because everything that they're posting and doing is negative. And I know that anybody who has taken classes from me for any length of time or heard me speak anywhere knows that I harp on this a lot. But what you put online matters. Families check this stuff out, agencies check this stuff out. We all have bad days. We all have rough days. Some of us are going to really struggle with a lot of what's going on. But sharing it all over social media, is that a good idea, or is that something where maybe candidates who are actively looking need to be a little more careful, or is that even an issue?
Um, I mean, social media is always an issue. It's one of my
Hmm.
favorite parts of running a nanny agency. Um, but I would say, like, even more so than the social media, is that there are all these negative thoughts and feelings going around. Like, if you are having them and you continue to have them and you don't do anything to kind of express them or get rid of them, they are going to come out, and you won't have as much control over it as you want. Like, they will come out on social media, they will come out of your mouth during an interview, they will come out in an email you're sending to an agency, they will come out when you're rewriting your resume describing how wonderful you are. If you're just sitting at home thinking, I hate doing dishes, I have to do so many dishes every day now, I'm never going to get to go outside again, this totally sucks, I hate this. Like, that's going to come out unless you get rid of it through whatever that is, through journaling, through meditation, through reading. Like, just if it's inside of you, it will come out.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, whatever is necessary to process and work through those things so that you can really focus on positive and focus on the good. And, that's one of the things I tell people all the time in terms of interviewing,
Mhm.
whether it's for agencies or whether it's with the families. I've been in this industry for 35 years. But if I'm going on an interview, I still sit down and I read letters of reference and I read testimonials. I read those things and I remind myself of what everybody else thinks is really good about what I do, because it actually has a physiological effect and it just changes everything
Mhm.
about how your interview goes, your confidence level, everything you bring to the table. And so, work through the tough stuff and focus on the positive makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna
So,
steal that interview tip. I like that one.
pardon?
I'm gonna steal that interview tip.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I do. I still do to this day. Even if I'm interviewing for something, semi unrelated or whatever, I still will read through those things.
Oh,
Really, it changes everything. And I tell nannies, even in person interviews, take that with you, take that folder with you, show up for your interview 5 minutes early. Don't knock on the door or don't log on if you're doing it virtually, and read those right before you interview. It changes the outcome of the interview. Really does. So anything else that you want to talk to us about tonight or share with our viewers?
I don't think so. I will keep an eye on the comments to answer any other questions that folks have.
Perfect. That would be great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on board and sharing your tips. I know that a lot of nannies have these questions, a lot of NCS have these questions, educators and other, household staff, they're looking for this information. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming and sharing with us tonight.
Well, of course, happy to share. Thank you.
Absolutely. If you have any questions for Shenandoah, please put them in the feed and tag her or tag Newborn Care Solutions, and we'll get them to her and we'll make sure we get those answers for you. Thanks for joining us tonight on Real Talk, where we address real topics, real issues, and we offer real solutions. Don't forget to join us every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on our Facebook. Thanks for joining us and have a great night.